Jernigan. And this is pre-trip under the table. First thing I do when I walk up to my vehicle, I'm gonna look for 4 leaks. Make sure there's no fuel, oil, water, or coolant, power steering fluid. Then I'm gonna check my lights. My headlights, my turn signal, my markers, my clearance, and my ID lights. Make sure they're properly mounted and secured, not cracked, broken, missing, or faded. The color is amber for all the lights except for my headlights. And now I'm gonna go ahead and go under my hood. Clear. As I come around to this side, first thing I'm gonna go ahead and check is my belts. Make sure it's not cut, cracked, damaged, or frayed. Make sure there's no more than a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of play. Check my alternator. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing bolts. No loose or bare wires. I'm also gonna check my water pump right down in here. Make sure there's no leaking. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing bolts. That's pretty much everything I'm looking on this side. I can also check my hoses. Make sure none of them are cracked or leaking. And now I'm gonna move on to the other side. On this side, I'm going to start on the inside and work my way out. First off, I'm going to start with my air compressor. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not loose or missing any bolts. I see no leaks. Now I'm going to check my oil. If it is low, I'm going to add 1 gallon. Alright, now, I can go ahead and start with my power steering reservoir. It is translucent or whatever you want to say. It's transparent. I can see through it. The level is good. Come over here to my coolant. I can also see through it, make sure I can see the level. If I couldn't see through it, I would make sure the engine was cool and then check the level from inside. Add if needed. When I come down here, I'm going to start with my steering. I'm going to check my steering mechanism, make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, no cracks, warps, dings. Go down here to my gearbox for my power steering. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, no signs of leaks or damage. I'm going to check my pitman arm, my drag link, and my tie rod in. My tie rod is located down here, all the way at the bottom. The rod that runs parallel to my axle. It has 3 castle nuts here, here, and the other one's back here at the back. Make sure the Carter keys are in place. They are all properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, no signs of cracks, damage, or unnecessary bends. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to my suspension. Some people like to say the power steering pump, which is located right here, properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts. I don't necessarily look for that. Checking my suspension, I'm going to check my leaf spring hangers forward and back, my U-bolts, and my leaf spring. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no cracks, damage, brokes. My shock absorber is also part of my suspension. I'm going to check the bushings in here, make sure everything's properly mounted and secured. There is no dings or leaks for my shock absorber. I'm going to go into my brake system. I'm going to check my hose. This going to my chamber, make sure there's no cuts, cracks, or leaks. I'm going to check my chamber. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, that the band is properly and tightly secured around it. I'm going to check my slack adjuster and the push rod. Make sure I do not have more than 1 inch of free play. It is sitting no more than 90-degree angle. Carter keys in place, and the brakes are set. Then I move in from there. I go to my drum. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, no signs of cracks, leaks, or damage. And then I'm going to check my pads, make sure they're not worn dangerously thin. As I come out here, we'll go ahead and check my tire. TOP. I'm going to check my tread depth to make sure it's no less than 4/32. Looking for any abrasions, bumps, cuts, damage, even wear. I'm also going to check my tire pressure with a mallet or an air gauge here with my valve stem that is properly mounted and secured, not loose, missing, broken. I'm going to check my rims on the inner and outer. Make sure there's no cracks, illegal welds, no signs of damage. Check my lug nuts. Make sure they're properly mounted and secured. No signs of rust, which indicates looseness. They're all there. Check my axle seal. Check the level of my axle seal down here. Make sure it's at the proper level. Make sure it's not leaking. It is properly mounted and secured. Check my mud flap. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing bolts. Not dry rotted or dragging. Some people call it mud flap, splash guard. Either way. Now I'm going to go ahead and close the hood. Clear? Go ahead and check my mirrors, make sure they're properly mounted and secured, no cracks, damage. Check my door, make sure there's no holes or any damage in my door. Make sure the inside and outside latch works. Make sure that the hinges can support the weight of the door. Alright, as I got my door open, I'm going to go ahead and check my steps. Make sure they're properly mounted, secured, and they can support my weight. While I'm here, I see my fire extinguisher. I'm going to go ahead, Check my fire extinguisher to make sure it's properly mounted and secured. Check to make sure it is 10 BC or 10 ABC. It is properly rated and charged. I'm going to step back here. Check the rest of my equipment. My 3 reflective triangles, extra fuses, and circuit breakers. Come back to my fuel tank. Check my fuel tank cap. Make sure it's securely tight. That the straps, there's no metal to metal rubbing. The rubber is in place. There's no cracks, dents, and no leaks from my fuel tank. Shut my door. Do another general. Make sure there's no damage. Come down. I'm going to check my side marker light just like I did the lights before. Color is amber. I'm going to come up on my catwalk, checking my steps and my catwalk, making sure they're properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts. It can withstand the weight of my body. Then I'm going to go ahead and check my frame. Make sure there's no cracks, unauthorized welds, warps, or dings. I'm going to check my drive shaft, which is located down in here. Make sure that the U-bolts are in place. There's nothing loose or missing. It's properly mounted. I see no warps or bends inside of it. As I'm looking up, I'm going to look at the back of my cab, check my reflective tape, make sure it's there. I'm going to check this back surface light just like I did the light before. The color is clear. I'm going to check my exhaust mounts, make sure they're properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, no signs of soot or damage to my exhaust. When I come back around, I'll check up under the cab to get my flex pipes. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and check my hoses at the back of the cab to make sure that the seals are in good working order, there's no leaks. I'm also going to check my electrical line, make sure, open it up, make sure it's free of dirt and water, make sure there's 7 prongs in place. Come through, check my lines, make sure there's no cuts, cracks, or damage in my service or emergency lines. And then I'm going to check my electrical line, make sure there's no loose or bare wires or no cuts, no frays. Here, I will go ahead and pull my glad hand off, look on the inside, make sure there's no oil or water inside. That will let me know something was wrong with the engine. Make sure that the grommets are in place, they are tightly secured. Nothing's loose or missing. I'd also check this part of my electrical line like I did the other. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and check my headboard. Make sure there's no holes, no damage, no cuts, no cracks. I'm going to check my clearance lights at the top, just like I did the other lights. Color is amber. As I come down here, I'm going to start to check my 5th wheel and then move on to my rear axle. Under here, I'm going to check my air actuator. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts. Air actuator is actually hooked up to my locking pins that are located right here. My locking pins that are located here, they are locked in to the platform and they give me proper clearance from my back axle to my landing gear. So now as I look under here, my release handle's on this side. I make sure it's in the proper stowed position on the inside. There's no daylight between my apron and the top of my glide plate. The apron is properly mounted and secured, no cracks or damage. Alright. My glide plate is properly mounted and secured. I see no damage in it. My mounting pin, which is located right here, is properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts. That the Carter key is in place. Now I'm going to check the rest of the 5th wheel, which is the platform. Checking to make sure all my horizontal and vertical bolts are in place. None are loose or missing. When I go around, I'll finish the 5th wheel. I'm going to check this axle just like I checked that axle. I'm going to go ahead and start with my suspension. I'm going to check my leaf spring hangers, my leaf spring, my U-bolts, my shock absorber. I'm going to check my airbag. I see I got a new piece here. So my airbag mounts and my airbag, make sure they're properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts, no signs of cracks, damage, or any leaks. I'm going to check my brake system, just like I did up front. My hose, my chamber, my slack adjuster, push rod, my drum, and my pads. As I come to the inside, I'm going to check my inside and outside rims. I'm going to check my bud spacing in between the rims. Make sure it's properly aligned, no daylight, and there's no debris inside. Check my tires. No less than 2/32 of tread depth. No abrasions, bumps, cuts, damage, even wear. Tire pressure. Check it with a mallet or a tire gauge on my valve stems for this rim and that one. Now I'm going to check my lug nuts, my axle seal, and my rims again. Make sure I've got everything on this one. As I move back, I'm going to check my mud flat. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not dry rotted or dragging or damaged. I would climb up under here and I would look to the inside of the 5th wheel. Make sure that the locking jaws are wrapped around the kingpin. Then I would see if there was any extra daylight. Make sure it is properly mounted and secured. Now I check all the lights at the back of the truck. My turn signal, my brake lights, my reverse light. They all should be red in color. My reverse lights are white. You check them just like I did the lights before. As I look under here, I'm going to check my cross members and my trailer floor. Make sure there's no holes, no damage, no warps, no loose or missing bolts, or anything hanging down. So I'll turn around and I'll check my landing gear, my ankle braces, and my feet. Make sure they're properly mounted and secured, nothing's loose or missing, and that my handle is in the proper stow position and is properly mounted and secured. As I come out, I'm going to check the frame in my trailer. All right, making sure that there's no warps, no cracks, no damages, that my DOT tape is reflective and present. Check the side of my trailer, make sure there's no holes, no damage, no cuts, warps, or any hull integrity messed up. As I come down, I'll check this side marker light, just like I check the other lights. The color is amber. When I get back here, go ahead and check my tandem release handle, make sure it's in the proper and mounted position, that my pins are in the lock position, and that they are there. I'm going to check this axle just like I checked the axle before. Back here I have leaf spring hanger, U-bolt. There is no shock absorber or airbag, so I'll go ahead and check this torsion bar right here. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts. I'm going to go ahead and check my brake system, my hose, my chamber, my slack adjuster, my push rod, my drum, and my pads. I'm going to check this tire just like I did those. Tread depth is no less than 2/32, no abrasions, bumps, cuts, damage, even wear. Check the tire pressure. My inner and outer rims, plus my bud spacing, just like I did before. I'm going to check my lug nuts, my axle seal, and my rim again, just like I did before. As I come back, I'm going to check this mud flap just like I did the one before. Then I'm going to move back here. Check my side marker light right here, red in color, just like I checked the lights before. Now, I'm going to go ahead, check my back of my trailer, make sure my locks and my hinges are properly mounted and secured, no loose or missing bolts. Locking mechanisms are locked in. I see no holes or damage inside my trailer. Come down, make sure my DOT tape is reflective and present. I'm going to check my ID lights, my turn signals, my brake, and my tail lights. They are red in color, just like I did the other lights up front. Check my DOT bumper, make sure it's properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing bolts. My tag light is present and working. It is clear in color. As I come around here, I'm looking for anything unique. Trailer looking just like it did on the other side. Usually on other trucks, I would check for my release handle, but we've already covered that. Now that I'm up under here, I'm going to check my flex hose pipe. That's up under the cab. Make sure I don't see no soot or holes or no more than 50% of damage in the flex pipe up under the cab. Now I'm going to come around and I'm going to check my light. As I climb up, I'll be using 3 points of contact to climb inside my vehicle. Once I sit down, it concludes the outside portion. Now with the examiner helping, I will turn on the ignition and turn on my lights. Now, I'll go ahead and check my high and low beams and my headlights. Checking my dash indicator, make sure the blue light comes on. Now I'm going to check my left turn signal. Dash indicator, the front, side, rear of the tractor, side, rear of the trailer. My right turn signal. Dash indicator, front, side, rear of the tractor, side, rear of the trailer. Four-way flashers. Go ahead and check the front, side, the rear of the tractor and trailer. As I turn those off and my lights are still on, we'll go ahead and check all my clearance lights and ID lights at the front of the tractor, side of the tractor, front of the trailer, side of the trailer, rear of the trailer, and the rear of the tractor. Covers all my lights. Now I'm going to go ahead and check my brake lights and my tail lights. Once I let off the brake, I can check both lights. All right? I don't have to check no service lights or no license plate lights or anything like that. Then I will go ahead and conduct a safe start. Make sure it's in neutral. My brakes are set. I go ahead and start the vehicle. Now, first thing I'm checking, make sure my ABS light is on. Make sure my ABS light is on. I want to check my oil pressure, make sure it's properly charged and rising. I'm going to check my water temperature gauge. Check my bolts, make sure it's being charged. And now I'm going to check my two air pressure gauges. They should be somewhere between 100 and 125. My air pressure is doing good, and my other gauges are good. Now I'm going to go ahead and check my windshield wipers. Make sure they work. It's properly mounted and secured. No loose or missing bolts. You check, make sure the washer fluid works. Which it does. So it's on the logic off. I'm going to check my mirror. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, not cracked or broken. Check my windshield. Make sure it's not cracked, broken, or anything messed up with the windshield. Check my horn. Alright. Now, my air pressure's almost where I want it to be. Looking around, make sure I haven't missed anything. Like my Z-cloth. Make sure it's blowing up on the dash and down below. Alright? Now, what I'm about to do is a toe test. First thing I'm going to do is check my parking brake. So I will release my trailer brake. I will depress the clutch, put it in low gear, and tug against my trailer brake, against my parking brake. Alright, parking brake failed. Now, I'll put it in the parking brake, set my trailer brake. Now I'll tug against my trailer brake. Good, it held me in the clutch. Look at here. Put the both in. Back in here. Now I will roll forward about 5 to 10 feet and hit my service brake. Make sure my service brake works so it doesn't pull the clutch to the side. Once that happens, I will go ahead, make sure my chocks are out, and then leave it in the gear if I'm going to leave it down. I'll turn it off. Now, I turn my key back on. I'm going to start my LAB. The L part is the leak down portion. Now that my ignition is back on, I will hold my foot on the brake for 1 minute. I should not lose more than 4 psi after the initial drop in 1 minute. Minutes up. Alright, that test was complete and it's satisfactory. Now I'm going to look for my alarms. Prior to 60 psi, I should get an audio or a visual alarm. There's my alarm. I have an audio and a visual alarm. It came on prior to 60 psi. That check is satisfactory. So now, with both buttons in, I will go ahead and pump it down, and between 20 and 40, both of my buttons should pop out. Both of my buttons have popped out between 20 and 40. That is a satisfactory test. Then I would go ahead and conduct a safe start again, depress my clutch,